My daughter looked me dead in the eye and said I was too poor to attend her wedding. The woman I raised alone from age 6, who never wanted for anything, told me my work clothes would embarrass her in front of her new family. So I did something she never expected. I bought the entire venue out from under her and canceled everything. Some call it petty. I call it a lesson 40 years in the making. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The rehearsal dinner invitation sat on my kitchen table for 3 weeks before I finally opened it. Heavy cardstock, embossed gold lettering, the kind of stationery that costs more than my monthly water bill. Robert Mitchell, it read. Not Dad. Not even Robert Mitchell and guest. Just my name, alone, like an afterthought squeezed onto the list at the last possible moment. I ran my thumb across the raised letters, feeling each ridge of expensive paper. 40 years of building Mitchell & Sons Plumbing from absolutely nothing, and my own daughter couldn't even write Dad on the invitation to her rehearsal dinner. The wedding invitation had been the same. Formal. Cold. My name listed among dozens of others, no different than a distant cousin or a workplace acquaintance. Sarah had called exactly twice in the past 6 months. Both times to discuss money. The first call came in October, her voice bright and energetic in that particular way that always preceded a request. Daddy, Derek and I found the most amazing venue. It's perfect. The Ashford estate overlooking the river. You'll love it. The price tag came later in the conversation, dropped casually like it was nothing. $25,000 just for the rental. Not including catering, florals, or any of the other essentials. She'd said essentials like a mansion wedding was somehow necessary for survival. The second call came in January. Brief, transactional. Daddy, we need to finalize numbers for the caterer. How many people are you bringing? The question caught me off guard. I'm bringing myself, sweetheart. Your old man doesn't have a +1 these days. The silence on her end stretched uncomfortably. Oh. Well, that's fine. That'll save on the head count actually. Save on the head count. My attendance at my only daughter's wedding was being calculated as a cost-saving measure. I should have seen it coming. The distance between us had been growing for years, widening slowly like a crack in foundation that you don't notice until the whole structure starts shifting. It started when she met Derek Hampton at some networking event in the Pearl District. He was everything I wasn't. Private school educated. Trust fund secure. The kind of man who'd never done a day of manual labor in his life and wore that fact like a badge of honor. Sarah started changing her speech patterns first. Dropping the slight Portland accent she'd grown up with, smoothing out her vowels into something more refined. Then came the wardrobe changes. Gone were the practical clothes I bought her. In their place, designer labels I had to Google to even recognize. She started introducing me differently at family gatherings. This is my father. He owns a plumbing business. The emphasis always landed on plumbing, like she was apologizing for my profession with every introduction. The engagement party had been my first real glimpse into the Hampton family world. Their estate in the West Hills was something from a different universe. Circular driveway, valet parking, servers in black tie carrying trays of champagne that probably cost more per bottle than I charged for a toilet repair. I'd worn my best suit, the navy one I'd bought for Sarah's college graduation. Clean, pressed, appropriate. Or so I thought. Victoria Hampton had assessed me with the kind of look women like her perfected over generations of inherited wealth. You must be Sarah's father. How quaint that you could make it. The word quaint landed like a slap. She'd moved on before I could respond, gliding across marble floors in heels that clicked with aristocratic precision. Derek's younger brother Marcus had been kinder, at least. He'd actually shaken my hand, asked about the plumbing business with what seemed like genuine interest. But even he couldn't hide the surprise when I mentioned I'd built the company from scratch, starting with just a pickup truck and a toolbox 40 years ago. Sarah had avoided me most of that evening. When we did speak, she kept her voice low, her eyes constantly scanning the room as if worried someone might notice us talking. "Daddy," she'd whispered, "maybe don't mention the plumbing business too much tonight. Derek's father is very particular about professional circles." Professional circles. Like 4 decades of honest work somehow disqualified me from polite society. I'd left that party early, driving my 15-year-old Ford pickup back to southeast Portland while luxury cars lined the Hampton driveway. The same truck that had hauled supplies for emergency repairs at 3 in the morning. The same truck that had taken Sarah to soccer practice, to music lessons, to college move-in day. Suddenly that truck was something to be ashamed of. The phone call came on Wednesday afternoon. 3 days before the wedding. I was finishing up a job in Selwood, replacing corroded pipes in a 100-year-old house. My hands were dirty, my back ached, and I was looking forward to a quiet evening when Sarah's name appeared on my phone screen. "Daddy, we need to talk about this weekend." Her voice carried a tension I recognized immediately. This wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. I wiped my hands on my work pants and stepped outside into April drizzle. "What about this weekend, sweetheart?" "The rehearsal dinner is Friday night." Black tie. Derek's family has very specific expectations about presentation. She paused, and in that pause, I could hear her gathering courage for whatever came next. "We've been talking, and we think it might be better if you sat out the rehearsal dinner. Just come to the ceremony on Saturday." The words hung in the damp air between us. Sit out the rehearsal dinner. The dinner where families came together the night before a wedding. Where fathers traditionally gave toasts about watching their daughters grow up. Where bonds were celebrated before the big day. "You want me to skip the rehearsal dinner? That's what you're saying?" "It's not that we don't want you there." Her voice took on that placating tone I'd heard more often lately. "It's just that Derek's family is very traditional. Very image-conscious. They're concerned about the optics." Optics. My daughter had reduced my presence at her wedding to a matter of optics. "What exactly are they concerned about, Sarah? Tell me plainly." Another pause. The sound of her breathing. Maybe the sound of her conscience making one last attempt to stop what came next. "Your work clothes, Daddy. You always wear those boots and jeans. Even when you try to dress up, you still look like a working man." Derek's mother thinks it sends the wrong message to their social circle. The wrong message. 40 years of providing for my daughter. 40 years of 12-hour days and emergency calls and skipped vacations so she could have dance lessons and summer camps and a college education without loans. All of that somehow sent the wrong message because I looked like exactly what I was. A man who worked with his hands. "I'm too poor for your rehearsal dinner. That's what you're telling me." "Daddy, don't be dramatic. It's not about being poor. It's about fitting in with a certain level of society. You don't understand the pressure Derek's family is under to maintain their reputation. Their reputation won't be damaged by having me at dinner, Sarah. But apparently yours will be." She didn't deny it. That hurt worse than anything else. The daughter I'd raised to value honesty and character was standing silent on the other end of the line, unable to defend me because deep down, she agreed with the Hamptons. I didn't fit their world. My work boots and calloused hands were embarrassments to be managed, not contributions to be honored. "Fine," I said quietly. "I won't come to the rehearsal dinner." The relief in her voice was immediate and crushing. "Oh, thank you, Daddy. You're being so understanding. This is why I love you. You always know how to make things easier. I'll see you Saturday at the ceremony, okay? The venue at 2 o'clock. Don't be late." She hung up without saying goodbye. I stood in the Selwood rain, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to dead air. A car drove past, spraying puddle water across the sidewalk. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. Life continued around me while something fundamental cracked inside my chest. I climbed back into my truck and sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Water beaded on the windshield, distorting the view of the street ahead. 40 years. 40 years of sacrifice and love and putting her needs above everything else in my life. After her mother died, I could have remarried quickly. Found someone to help with the enormous task of raising a 6-year-old girl alone. Instead, I chose to be everything Sarah needed myself. Bedtime stories every single night, even when I was dead tired from crawling under houses all day. Parent-teacher conferences where I was often the only father in a room full of mothers. Dance recitals where I learned to braid hair from YouTube videos because Sarah wanted her hair to look pretty like the other girls. Birthday parties, school projects, teenage heartbreaks, college applications. I'd been there for all of it, never complaining, never keeping score. And now I was too poor, too working class, too embarrassing to stand beside her at her own rehearsal dinner. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Tony Ramirez. My business partner and best friend for 30 years. He answered on the second ring. "Bob, what's up? You finished that Selwood job?" "Tony, I need you to cover for me tomorrow and Friday. Something's come up." "Everything okay?" "You sound off." "Everything's fine. I just need to take care of some personal business before the wedding." There was a pause. Tony knew me well enough to hear what I wasn't saying. "This about Sarah?" I didn't answer directly. "Can you cover or not?" "Of course I can cover. You know that. But Bob, whatever you're thinking about doing, maybe sleep on it first." "I've already slept on it for 6 months, Tony." This conversation just woke me up. I hung up and started the engine. The drive back to my office took 20 minutes through afternoon traffic. Southeast Portland streets gave way to the industrial area where Mitchell & Sons Plumbing had operated for 4 decades. The small commercial building looked exactly like what it was. A blue-collar business built by a man who'd started with nothing and created something solid through sheer determination. Inside, Rita was finishing up paperwork at the front desk. She'd been my office manager for 20 years, had watched Sarah grow up through pictures on these walls. "Hey boss. You're back early. I thought that Selwood job would take you till 5. It's done. Rita, I need you to pull some financial records for me. Everything related to Sarah's expenses over the past 25 years. Education, housing support, vehicle purchases, medical bills, everything." Rita's eyebrows rose, but she didn't question me. She'd learned long ago that when I asked for something specific, I had my reasons. "That's going to be a lot of documents. Might take me a few hours to compile everything. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." I walked into my private office and closed the door. The space was small, practical, decorated with family photos and certificates from the Plumbing Association. On my desk sat a framed picture from Sarah's high school graduation. She was beaming, cap and gown, her arm around my shoulders. Back when she wasn't ashamed to be photographed with her working-class father. I opened my laptop and began searching. The Ashford estate. $25,000 rental fee. Historic mansion overlooking the Willamette River. Owned and operated by Mrs. Eleanor Ashford for the past 30 years. I clicked through photos of the venue. Grand ballroom with crystal chandeliers. Sweeping staircase perfect for wedding photos. Manicured gardens leading down to the river. Everything Sarah had ever dreamed of for her perfect day. Then I found what I was looking for. A small notation at the bottom of the website. For sale inquiries, please contact Eleanor Ashford directly. The property had been on the market quietly for 8 months. No public listing, just word of mouth among Portland's elite. Mrs. Ashford was 75, widowed, no children. The estate had become too much for her to manage alone. I picked up my phone and dialed the number listed. It rang 4 times before an elderly voice answered. "Ashford Estate, Eleanor speaking." "Mrs. Ashford, my name is Robert Mitchell. I understand your property might be available for purchase. There was a pause, the sound of surprise. Well, yes. It is. Though I don't advertise that widely. How did you hear about it? My daughter is getting married at your venue this Saturday. I've been doing some research. Another pause, longer this time. You're Sarah Mitchell's father. Yes, she mentioned you during our planning meetings. A lovely young woman. I let that assessment hang without comment. Mrs. Ashford, I'd like to discuss purchasing your property. Would you be available to meet tomorrow morning? Mr. Mitchell, I appreciate your interest, but this is a significant transaction. These things typically take months of negotiation. I'm aware of that. But I'm prepared to make you an offer that would expedite the process considerably. What if I told you I could close within 48 hours, cash payment, no contingencies? The silence on her end lasted nearly 15 seconds. Mr. Mitchell, are you serious? Completely serious. I've been in business for 40 years, Mrs. Ashford. I know my numbers and I keep my word. If we can come to terms tomorrow, I'll have my attorney draw up contracts immediately. Well, the surprise in her voice was evident. I suppose I could meet you tomorrow morning. Say 10 o'clock? I'll be there at 10. Thank you for your time, Mrs. Ashford. I ended the call and leaned back in my chair. Through my office window, I could see the shop floor where my crew was cleaning up for the day. Good men, all of them. The kind of workers who showed up on time, did honest work, took pride in their craft. The kind of men the Hamptons would probably consider too poor to attend their fancy parties. Rita knocked and entered carrying 3 thick folders. Boss, I've got 25 years of financial records here. Education expenses, vehicle purchases, housing support, medical bills, everything you asked for. She set the folders on my desk with a heavy thud. Bob, what's going on? Are you okay? I'm fine, Rita. Better than fine, actually. For the first time in months, I know exactly what I need to do. I ended the call and leaned back in my chair. Through my office window, I could see the shop floor where my crew was cleaning up for the day. Good men, all of them. The kind of workers who showed up on time, did honest work, took pride in their craft. The kind of men the Hamptons would probably consider too poor to attend their fancy parties. Rita knocked and entered carrying 3 thick folders. Boss, I've got 25 years of financial records here. Education expenses, vehicle purchases, housing support, medical bills, everything you asked for. She set the folders on my desk with a heavy thud. Bob, what's going on? Are you okay? I'm fine, Rita. Better than fine, actually. For the first time in months, I know exactly what I need to do. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that comes after making a difficult decision. I'd spent most of the night reviewing financial documents, building a complete picture of 25 years of fatherhood translated into dollars and cents. The numbers were staggering even to me, and I'd been the one writing the checks all those years. Private school tuition at Portland Academy had run $11,000 annually for 12 years. Sarah had needed the best education, or so I'd convinced myself. While other single fathers might have chosen public schools and saved the money, I'd worked double shifts to afford private education. The total came to $132,000 just for kindergarten through 12th grade. Then came University of Oregon. State school, but hardly cheap. Tuition, room and board, meal plans, textbooks, spending money. Sarah had joined a sorority her sophomore year, adding another layer of expenses. Greek life fees, formal dresses, social events, spring break trips with her sisters. $48,000 per year for 4 years. Nearly $200,000 for an undergraduate degree in communications that she'd barely used since graduation. The vehicle history was its own category of excess. First car at 16, a reliable Toyota Camry for $19,000. She'd driven it for exactly 14 months before complaining it wasn't nice enough for her friends at Portland Academy. Second car at 17, a Lexus sedan for $38,000. That one lasted through college until she moved back to Portland and decided she needed an SUV for the city. Third car at 26, a Range Rover for $62,000 because Derek's crowd all drove luxury vehicles. Housing support had been the quiet killer of my retirement savings. After college, Sarah had moved into a Pearl District loft. $2,200 monthly rent that I'd covered entirely for 3 years while she worked part-time jobs that never quite covered her lifestyle. When she finally moved in with Derek last year, I'd felt relief at the expense ending. That relief lasted until the wedding planning began. The wedding itself represented another tier of financial commitment. Sarah had presented her budget to me back in November like she was doing me a favor by keeping it under 6 figures. Venue rental, $25,000. Catering for 150 guests at $200 per plate, another $30,000. Photography package, $8,000. Floral arrangements, $12,000. Her dress alone cost $9,000. The total wedding budget was $147,000. And I'd agreed to every line item without protest. I added the columns again, double-checking my math. Education, $332,000. Vehicles, $119,000. Housing support, $79,000. Wedding, $147,000. Medical expenses, clothing, travel, miscellaneous support over the years, another $83,000. The grand total was $760,000 spent over 25 years raising Sarah Mitchell. $750,000, and yesterday she told me I was too poor to attend her rehearsal dinner. My phone alarm chimed at 8:30. Time to get ready for my meeting with Eleanor Ashford. I showered, shaved, and dressed in the same navy suit I'd worn to the engagement party. The suit the Hamptons had judged insufficient for their social circles. Today it would serve a different purpose. Tony called as I was leaving the house. "Bob, you sure about whatever you're planning? I can hear it in your voice. You've got that tone." "What tone is that?" "The same tone you had when you bid on the Morrison contract everyone said was too big for us. The tone that says you're about to do something dramatic." "I'm just having a business meeting, Tony." "With who?" "Nobody you know. Just trust me on this." "Bob, I've known you 30 years. When you say trust me like that, it usually means something big is about to happen. Just cover the jobs today and tomorrow. I'll explain everything after the weekend." The drive to the Ashford estate took 30 minutes through Portland traffic. The property sat on 5 acres in the West Hills, accessible via a winding private drive lined with old-growth Douglas firs. The mansion itself was a stunning piece of Pacific Northwest history. Built in 1875 by a timber baron, the house featured classic Victorian architecture with modern updates that had been carefully integrated to preserve its character. Eleanor Ashford met me at the front entrance. She was exactly as I'd imagined from her voice on the phone. 75 years old, silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun, wearing wool slacks and a cardigan that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. But her handshake was firm and her eyes were sharp with intelligence. "Mr. Mitchell, thank you for coming. I must admit, your call yesterday intrigued me considerably." She gestured for me to follow her inside. The entry hall featured original hardwood floors and a grand staircase that curved up to the second floor. Through doorways, I could see the ballroom where Sarah's wedding was scheduled to take place in 2 days. Most people who inquire about purchasing this property want months of inspections and negotiations. You suggested 48 hours. I'm not most people, Mrs. Ashford. And I understand the value of what you're offering here. We walked through the main floor as she pointed out features and historical details. The ballroom could accommodate 200 guests comfortably. The commercial kitchen had been updated 5 years ago to meet modern catering standards. The gardens were maintained by a professional service. Every detail spoke to the care Eleanor had invested in preserving this property. She led me to a sitting room overlooking the river. Tea had already been prepared on a silver service. "Mr. Mitchell, before we discuss numbers, I need to understand your intentions. This property has been in my family for 3 generations. I'm not simply selling to the highest bidder. I want to know it will go to someone who appreciates what it represents." I accepted the teacup she offered and settled into a leather armchair that had probably witnessed a century of conversations. "Mrs. Ashford, I've spent 40 years building a plumbing business from nothing. I started with a pickup truck and a toolbox, working 18-hour days to establish myself. I raised my daughter alone after my wife passed away when Sarah was 6 years old. Everything I earned went into giving her the best life I could provide." Eleanor's expression softened slightly. She'd mentioned during our planning meetings that her father passed when she was young. "She said you worked very hard to give her opportunities." "That's true. I gave her everything. Private education, college without loans, vehicles, housing support, and now a wedding at this beautiful venue. The wedding she's planning for Saturday." "Yes, the Mitchell-Hampton wedding. Everything is prepared. The catering is confirmed, the florist has already begun setup." Eleanor paused, studying my face. "Mr. Mitchell, why do you want to buy this property 2 days before your daughter's wedding?" I set down my teacup and met her gaze directly. "Because yesterday, my daughter told me I was too poor to attend her rehearsal dinner tomorrow night. She said my work clothes and my blue-collar background would embarrass her in front of her new family. The woman I raised alone, who never wanted for anything, has decided that the man who made her entire lifestyle possible isn't good enough to stand beside her the night before her wedding." Eleanor's expression shifted from curious to understanding. She set down her own teacup with deliberate care. "I see. And purchasing this property would give you control over her wedding venue." "Exactly. I want my daughter to understand what she's thrown away. Not just my presence at one dinner, but the respect and gratitude she should have maintained throughout her life. This isn't about revenge, Mrs. Ashford. It's about teaching a lesson that should have been learned years ago." She was quiet for a long moment, looking out the window at the manicured gardens sloping down toward the river. "Mr. Mitchell, I need to tell you something. When your daughter came here for planning meetings, she spoke extensively about the Hampton family. Their social standing, their connections, their expectations for this wedding. She barely mentioned you at all. When she did, it was always in the context of you paying for things, never about your relationship or what you meant to her. That doesn't surprise me." Eleanor turned back to face me. "It should have raised concerns for me then, but I assumed it was simply wedding stress. Young brides sometimes lose perspective during planning. But what you're describing sounds like a deeper pattern of disrespect." She stood and walked to an antique desk in the corner, pulling out a folder. "This property is listed at $3.2 million. That's below market value for the location and historical significance, but I'm not interested in squeezing every dollar from the sale. I'm interested in finding the right buyer." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, turning the screen toward her. "Mrs. Ashford, this is my business account. Mitchell & Sons Plumbing has been profitable for 40 years. I've lived modestly, invested wisely, and saved aggressively. I can transfer $3.2 million to your account by end of business today. My attorney can have purchase contracts drawn up within 3 hours. We can close tomorrow morning." Eleanor stared at the account balance on my screen. Her eyes widened slightly. "You have $4.1 million in liquid assets. For a plumbing business. For a successful plumbing business built over 4 decades. I've never taken extravagant vacations, never bought luxury vehicles, never lived in a mansion. Every dollar I earned either went into the business or into Sarah's future. Apparently that makes me too poor for polite society." She handed me the folder containing property information. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm 75 years old. My children moved away decades ago and started their own lives. This house has become a burden I can no longer manage alone. I've been looking for the right buyer for 8 months, someone who would appreciate what this place represents." She smiled, and there was something almost mischievous in her expression. I think teaching entitled children about consequences is exactly the kind of legacy this property should support. You're saying you'll sell to me. I'm saying I'll have my attorney contact yours within the hour. We'll expedite every aspect of this transaction. She extended her hand and I shook it firmly. But Mr. Mitchell, I have one condition. What's that? I want to be here on Saturday when your daughter arrives for her wedding. I want to see the moment she realizes what her disrespect has cost her. I couldn't help but smile. Mrs. Ashford, you're welcome to be here. In fact, I insist on it. We spent the next hour discussing logistics. Eleanor provided contact information for her attorney, a man named Harrison Webb who apparently specialized in rapid real estate transactions for Portland's wealthy families. She gave me access codes to the property, keys to all buildings, and complete vendor contact lists. Your daughter has a florist arriving tomorrow morning at 7 to complete setup. The catering company will be here Saturday at noon. The photographer is scheduled for 1 o'clock. Eleanor handed me a thick binder containing all wedding details. Everything you need to manage or cancel the event is in here. I left the Ashford estate at noon carrying that binder like evidence in a trial. The Portland skyline spread out below as I drove back down the winding road. My phone rang before I'd gone 2 miles. Linda Chen, my attorney, her voice sharp and efficient as always. Bob, I just got a very interesting call from Harrison Webb about a property purchase. What are you up to? Linda, I need you to make this happen fast. Property purchase agreement, title search, everything expedited. Can you close by tomorrow morning? Harrison says you're paying cash and willing to waive most contingencies. Bob, that's $3.2 million. Are you absolutely certain about this? I've never been more certain about anything in my life. Make it happen, Linda. She sighed, but I could hear her keyboard already clicking in the background. I'll have contracts ready by 5 o'clock today. You'll need to come sign them. Title company is standing by for tomorrow morning. Bob, this is either brilliant or insane. Maybe both. That's what I'm counting on. I drove straight to the office where Rita looked up with obvious concern. You've got that expression. The one that means something major just happened. Get Tony in here. We need to talk. 5 minutes later, the three of us sat in my office with the door closed. Tony leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, waiting for an explanation. Rita had her notepad ready like she was preparing to document something historic. I just put an offer on the Ashford estate. The property where Sarah's wedding is scheduled for Saturday. Tony's eyes widened. You bought a $3 million property? 2 days before your daughter's wedding at that venue? I'm buying it specifically because of the wedding. Sarah told me yesterday I was too poor to attend her rehearsal dinner. So I'm showing her exactly how poor I am. Rita's pen stopped moving across her notepad. Bob, are you canceling her wedding? Not canceling it. Just taking control of it. The venue is mine as of tomorrow morning. What happens after that depends on Sarah. Tony rubbed his face with both hands. Okay. I need you to walk me through your thinking here, because this seems like scorched earth territory. It is scorched earth. I've spent 25 years being a good father. I've provided everything, asked for nothing, accepted increasing disrespect as the price of maintaining our relationship. Yesterday she crossed a line. She didn't just hurt my feelings. She demonstrated complete contempt for everything I've sacrificed to give her the life she's living. But Bob, Rita said quietly, canceling her wedding 2 days before the ceremony, that's nuclear. People will talk. Let them talk. I spent $760,000 raising that woman. I have the receipts to prove it. When she decided I wasn't good enough to stand beside her because I work with my hands, she made a choice about what our relationship is worth. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Tony was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What's the endgame here? You cancel the wedding, she hates you forever. Then what? The endgame is Sarah learning that respect isn't optional just because someone loves you unconditionally. I've enabled her entitlement for too long. This stops now. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda Chen. Contracts ready at 4:30. Bring your checkbook and your resolve. This is really happening. I stood up, signaling the meeting was over. Tony, Rita, I need you both to trust me. Cover the business tomorrow and Saturday. I'll handle everything else. And Tony, if Sarah calls looking for me, you haven't heard from me. Boss, Rita said as I headed for the door, for what it's worth, I think she had this coming. That girl hasn't appreciated you properly in years. I've watched it happen. Maybe this is exactly the wake-up call she needs. The afternoon passed in a blur of legal documentation. Linda had everything prepared with her usual thoroughness. Property purchase agreement, title insurance, inspection waivers, closing schedules. I signed page after page while she explained each document. Harrison Webb joined us via video conference, confirming that Eleanor Ashford had signed matching documents on her end. Closing is scheduled for 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, Harrison said from the screen. Mrs. Ashford has been very clear that she wants this transaction completed as quickly as possible. She seems quite invested in your situation, Mr. Mitchell. Mrs. Ashford understands what I'm trying to accomplish. She's been very gracious about expediting everything. By 6 o'clock, I'd transferred $3.2 million from my business account to an escrow service. The money I'd saved over 40 years, the nest egg I'd planned to use for retirement, now tied up in a Victorian mansion I was buying to teach my daughter about consequences. I drove home through evening traffic feeling strangely calm. The decision was made. The wheels were in motion. Tomorrow morning I would own the Ashford estate. Tomorrow night was the rehearsal dinner I'd been uninvited from. Saturday was the wedding that might not happen. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Sarah's name appeared on the screen. I considered not answering, then decided this conversation needed to happen. Hello, sweetheart. Daddy, hi. I just wanted to confirm you got my message about tomorrow night. About me not coming to the rehearsal dinner. Yes, I got that message very clearly. Good. I know it seems harsh, but you'll understand when you see how elegant everything is on Saturday. Derek's family really knows how to put on an event. I'm sure they do. Sarah, can I ask you something? Of course, Daddy. What is it? When was the last time you thanked me for anything? There was a pause. What do you mean? When was the last time you expressed genuine gratitude for my financial support? For everything I've provided over the years? I thank you all the time. Do you? Because I've been thinking about it, and I can't remember the last time you said thank you for anything beyond the most cursory acknowledgement that I'd paid for something you wanted. Daddy, this seems like a strange conversation to have 2 days before my wedding. Maybe it's exactly the right time to have it. You told me I'm too poor to attend your rehearsal dinner. I'd like to know what you think that says about our relationship. Another pause, longer this time. I didn't say you were too poor. I said your presentation might not match the event's formality. That's a very diplomatic way of saying the same thing, Sarah. I'm a plumber. I've been a plumber your entire life. The work I do with these hands paid for every single thing you've ever had. And now you're ashamed of that. I'm not ashamed. I just think there's a time and place for everything. And tomorrow night isn't the right time for work boots and casual clothes. I wasn't planning to wear work boots to your rehearsal dinner. I own suits. I know how to dress appropriately. But apparently my best isn't good enough for the Hamptons. Daddy, please don't make this difficult. I have 1,000 things to finalize before Saturday. Can we just agree that you'll come to the ceremony and everything will be fine? We can agree that I heard you very clearly yesterday. You'll see me Saturday, Sarah. That much I can promise. I ended the call before she could respond. Inside my house, I poured a glass of whiskey and sat at my kitchen table with the folder Rita had compiled. 25 years of financial records spread before me like evidence of love that had somehow transformed into entitlement. Tomorrow morning I would own a mansion. Tomorrow night Sarah would have her elegant rehearsal dinner without her embarrassing father present. And Saturday, she would learn exactly what her disrespect had purchased. Friday morning began at the title company office downtown. Lindichin met me in the lobby at 8:45, carrying a leather briefcase that probably weighed as much as my toolbox. Harrison Webb arrived moments later with Eleanor Ashford, who looked surprisingly energized for someone finalizing the sale of her family estate. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. Four people sat around a polished table while a title officer named Patricia moved through documentation with practiced efficiency. Property deed, transfer documents, final settlement statements. Each signature brought me closer to owning a $3 million mansion I had no practical use for beyond making a point. Mr. Mitchell, Patricia said, sliding the final document across the table, this completes the transfer of the Ashford estate to your ownership. Congratulations on your new property. I signed my name one last time and accepted the folder containing my copies of everything. The entire transaction had taken 47 hours from initial contact to closing. Eleanor had been right about Portland's wealthy families having attorneys who could expedite anything. Eleanor reached across the table to shake my hand. Mr. Mitchell, I hope this property serves your purposes well. And I meant what I said yesterday. I'll be there tomorrow to witness the outcome. I appreciate that, Mrs. Ashford. Your support has made this possible. She smiled with that mischievous expression I'd seen during our first meeting. Sometimes the best use of a historic property is teaching historic lessons about respect and consequences. We left the title company at 9:30. I now owned a Victorian mansion, 5 acres of prime Portland real estate, and complete control over my daughter's wedding venue. The irony wasn't lost on me that Sarah had uninvited me from her rehearsal dinner because I was too poor, while I'd just purchased the entire location of her wedding. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Sarah. I ignored them and drove straight to the Ashford estate. The property felt different now that it belonged to me. The winding drive through Douglas firs, the manicured gardens, the mansion itself, all of it was mine to control. I parked near the service entrance and used my new keys to enter through the kitchen. Inside, a catering team was already at work. A woman in her 40s wearing chef's whites looked up in surprise. "Can I help you? This is a private event space. I'm Robert Mitchell. As of 9:30 this morning, I'm the new owner of this property." The woman's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "I'm Jennifer Costa, head chef for Greenleaf Catering. We're preparing for the Mitchell-Hampton rehearsal dinner tonight and the wedding reception tomorrow. I'm aware of the events. We need to discuss some changes to those plans." 20 minutes later, I sat in what had been Eleanor's private office with Jennifer and her event coordinator, a nervous young man named Tyler. The contracts spread across the desk showed that Sarah and Derek had signed agreements with Greenleaf Catering 3 months ago. Total cost for both events was $42,000, paid in full by me 6 weeks prior. "Ms. Costa, I want to be clear about something. I paid for these catering services. My daughter scheduled them. But as of this morning, I own this venue and I have the authority to modify or cancel any events taking place on this property." Jennifer exchanged glances with Tyler. "Mr. Mitchell, with all due respect, we have contracts. We've already purchased ingredients, assigned staff, committed resources. Canceling now would be extremely problematic. I understand that, and I'm not asking you to cancel entirely. I'm asking you to hold the services pending resolution of a family matter. You'll be compensated for your time and preparation regardless of whether the events proceed. But nothing happens on this property without my explicit approval." Tyler's voice shook slightly when he spoke. "Sir, the rehearsal dinner is scheduled for 6 o'clock tonight. Guests will be arriving in less than 9 hours. What are we supposed to tell them?" "Tell them nothing. I'll handle communication with the wedding party. Your job is to have everything ready but not to serve anything until I give the word." Jennifer's professional composure was cracking. "Mr. Mitchell, I've been in this business for 20 years. I've never had a venue owner intervene in a contracted event like this. What exactly are you trying to accomplish?" I'm trying to teach my daughter that disrespecting the person who made her entire lifestyle possible comes with real consequences. She told me I was too poor to attend tonight's dinner. So I bought the venue where she's holding it. Now she'll learn what financial power actually looks like. The silence in the office lasted several seconds. Tyler looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Jennifer studied me with a mixture of concern and grudging respect. That's the most expensive lesson in parental boundaries I've ever heard of. Will you serve the rehearsal dinner tonight or not? That depends entirely on whether my daughter can demonstrate she understands what she's done wrong. If she can show genuine remorse and accountability, dinner proceeds as planned. If she continues with the entitlement and disrespect, everyone goes home hungry. Jennifer gathered her contracts and stood. Mr. Mitchell, I hope your daughter is smart enough to see what's really being offered here. For what it's worth, anyone who'd uninvite their own father from their rehearsal dinner probably needs exactly this kind of wake-up call. She and Tyler left to brief their staff on the bizarre situation. I sat alone in the office, looking out at gardens where white tents had been erected for tonight's dinner. 60 guests were expected, including the entire Hampton family and their social circle. All of them about to witness what happened when entitled children pushed loving parents too far. My phone rang. Sarah's name appeared for the 4th time that morning. I answered on the 3rd ring. Hello, sweetheart. Daddy, where have you been? I've been calling all morning. I had a business meeting. What can I do for you? I wanted to make sure you're okay with everything. I know yesterday's conversation was difficult, but I need you to understand it wasn't personal. Sarah, telling your father he's too poor to attend your rehearsal dinner is absolutely personal. There's no other way to interpret that. She sighed with audible frustration. You're being oversensitive. Derek's family has certain standards. I was trying to protect you from feeling uncomfortable. Protect me by excluding me. That's an interesting interpretation of protection. Can we please not do this today? I have 100 details to finalize. The florist is at the venue now, the photographer wants to do a walkthrough, and I still need to confirm timing with the caterer. How is everything at the venue? It's fine. Everything's proceeding as planned. That's good. I want tonight to be perfect. Derek's parents have invited some very important people. This dinner will set the tone for the entire wedding weekend. I'm sure it will set a tone. Daddy, I need to go. I'll see you tomorrow at the ceremony. 2 o'clock. Please don't be late. I won't be late, Sarah. I can promise you that. She hung up without saying goodbye, exactly as she had 2 days ago. The pattern was so ingrained she didn't even notice anymore. Our conversations had become transactional exchanges where she issued instructions and I was expected to comply. I spent the next hour walking the property, familiarizing myself with every detail of the venue I now owned. The ballroom where tomorrow's reception was scheduled featured original chandeliers from 1875, restored hardwood floors, and silk wallpaper that probably cost more than my truck. The gardens sloped down toward the river in carefully maintained terraces. White roses climbed trellises near the ceremony site. Everything was objectively beautiful and completely wasted on a bride who couldn't appreciate the man who'd made it all possible. The florist found me near the rose garden around noon. She was a woman in her 50s with dirt under her fingernails and an artist's eye for arrangement. You must be Mr. Mitchell. I'm Diane from Petal and Stem. We're finishing setup for tonight's dinner and tomorrow's ceremony. Word travels fast. Eleanor called me this morning to let me know there'd been a change in ownership. She said you're Sarah's father. That's right. She also said there might be complications with the events this weekend. I wanted to introduce myself in case you need anything adjusted. I appreciate that, Diane. Tell me something. When Sarah hired you, did she mention me at all during the planning process? Diane's expression became carefully neutral. She mentioned budget approval. That you were covering costs. But in terms of your involvement or importance to the wedding, there wasn't much discussion. It was mostly about impressing the Hampton family and their associates. That confirms what I suspected. Diane, your arrangements are beautiful. I want you to complete everything exactly as planned. Whether those arrangements get used tomorrow depends on my daughter, not on you. She nodded slowly. Mr. Mitchell, I've done flowers for hundreds of weddings. The ones that focus more on impressing guests than on celebrating family usually don't end well, regardless of how expensive the arrangements are. Your daughter might be learning that lesson the hard way. Let's hope she's capable of learning it. The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. I stayed at the estate, watching preparations unfold while vendors arrived and departed. The photographer showed up at 2 to scout locations. The musicians came at 3 to test acoustics in the tent. Everything moved forward like a machine that didn't know it might not be needed. At 4:30, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered cautiously. Is this Robert Mitchell? This is Victoria Hampton, Derek's mother. We need to speak immediately. Mrs. Hampton, what can I do for you? I've just been informed by the venue coordinator that there's been a change in property ownership. That the Ashford estate now belongs to you. Is this information accurate? Completely accurate. I purchased the property yesterday. The sale closed this morning. Her voice took on the sharp edge I remembered from the engagement party. Mr. Mitchell, what exactly are you playing at? My son's rehearsal dinner is scheduled to begin in 90 minutes. I'm not playing at anything, Mrs. Hampton. I'm simply exercising my rights as the new property owner to oversee events on my land. This is outrageous. We have contracts. We have 60 guests arriving shortly. You cannot simply interfere with a planned event. Actually, I can. The venue belongs to me. The catering was paid for by me. The flowers, the music, all of it exists because of my financial contribution. And yet somehow I was deemed too poor to actually attend the dinner. Victoria's silence suggested she understood exactly what I was referencing. Derek mentioned there had been some family disagreement about attendance. That's a diplomatic way to describe your family deciding my blue-collar background was too embarrassing for your social circle. Mrs. Hampton, let me be very clear. Tonight's dinner and tomorrow's wedding will proceed only if my daughter can demonstrate she understands the magnitude of her disrespect. You're holding their wedding hostage over hurt feelings. I'm providing an education about consequences that apparently no one else in Sarah's life has bothered to teach her. The call ended abruptly. Victoria Hampton wasn't accustomed to being challenged, especially not by people she considered beneath her social station. Her discomfort with the situation gave me more satisfaction than it probably should have. At 5:15, Derek called. Mr. Mitchell, this is Derek Hampton. My mother just informed me about the property situation. We need to resolve this immediately. Hello, Derek. What would you like to resolve? This stunt you're pulling. Buying the venue, threatening to cancel our events. It's childish and inappropriate. You're embarrassing Sarah and making our families look ridiculous. I'm making your families look ridiculous. That's an interesting perspective. Last I checked, it was your family that decided a man who spent 40 years building a successful business wasn't suitable company for your rehearsal dinner. Mr. Mitchell, you need to understand something. The people attending tonight's dinner are important. Business associates, community leaders, people whose opinions matter. This disruption reflects poorly on everyone involved. Everyone except me, apparently. Since I wasn't invited anyway. Derek's frustration was audible. What do you want? Money? Is this about the wedding costs? Because we can work something out if this is a financial shakedown. I don't want your money, Derek. I want my daughter to understand what she sacrificed in pursuit of your family's approval. I want her to recognize that the man she dismissed has more power than she ever imagined. And I want her to learn this lesson before it's too late to salvage any respect between us. So what, we're supposed to come grovel? Apologize for hurting your feelings so you'll allow our rehearsal dinner to proceed? Not we, Derek. Sarah. This is between me and my daughter. You're just collateral damage in a much longer story about parental sacrifice and filial ingratitude. You're insane. You know that? You've lost perspective completely. I ended the call and silenced my phone. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western hills, casting long shadows across the estate grounds. In the white tent, catering staff stood ready with food that might never be served. In the parking area, the first guests were beginning to arrive. Through the mansion windows, I watched luxury vehicles pulling up the circular drive. Women in cocktail dresses, men in blazers and ties. The Hampton social circle assembling for an elegant evening that was about to become something very different. Victoria and her husband emerged from a black Mercedes. Derek's brother Marcus arrived with a date. Family and friends gathered near the tent entrance, checking phones and making small talk. At exactly 6 o'clock, Sarah and Derek pulled up in his Range Rover. My daughter looked stunning in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Her hair was styled perfectly, her makeup flawless. She was laughing at something Derek said as they walked toward the tent entrance, completely unaware that her perfect evening was balanced on a knife's edge. Jennifer Costa found me in the mansion's entry hall. "Mr. Mitchell, everyone is here. The guests are getting restless. What do you want me to do? Give me 5 minutes. Then make an announcement that dinner service will be delayed due to unforeseen circumstances. Ask everyone to wait in the tent. Don't mention me specifically." She hesitated. "You're really going through with this?" "I'm giving my daughter one chance to demonstrate she understands what she's done. What happens next is entirely up to her." I walked outside into the cooling evening air. 60 guests milled around the white tent, drinks in hand, confusion beginning to ripple through the crowd. Sarah stood near Derek and his parents, her expression shifting from confident to concerned as she noticed the empty serving stations. I approached the group directly, my work boots quiet on the grass. My navy suit, the one the Hamptons had judged insufficient at the engagement party, felt perfectly appropriate now. Sarah saw me first. Her face went pale. "Daddy, what are you doing here? You said you weren't coming." "I wasn't invited, remember? But circumstances have changed since yesterday." Derek stepped forward, positioning himself between Sarah and me. "Mr. Mitchell, you need to leave. This is a private event." "Actually, Derek, this is my property. As of 9:30 this morning, I own the Ashford estate. Which means nothing happens here without my permission." The crowd around us had gone silent. 60 pairs of eyes fixed on the confrontation unfolding near the tent entrance. Victoria Hampton's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Derek looked like he wanted to physically remove me from the premises. Sarah's confusion was transforming into dawning horror as she began to understand what I'd done. "You bought the venue." Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "You actually bought it." "I did. Paid $3.2 million. Cash. Closed the deal this morning. Turns out your poor father had some resources you didn't know about." "This is insane," Derek hissed. "You can't just buy a property to sabotage your daughter's wedding." "I didn't buy it to sabotage anything. I bought it to teach a lesson that should have been learned years ago." I turned my attention to Sarah, ignoring everyone else. "Sweetheart, you told me I was too poor to attend your rehearsal dinner. You said my presence would embarrass you in front of these important people. So I decided to show you exactly what poor looks like." "Daddy, please. Not here. Not in front of everyone." "Why not here? You didn't hesitate to exclude me in front of everyone. You made your choice about what our relationship is worth. Now everyone gets to see the consequences." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to make things easier." "Easier for who?" "Certainly not for me. The man who spent $760,000 over 25 years making sure you never wanted for anything. The man who raised you alone after your mother died. The man who worked double shifts so you could go to private school and drive luxury cars and have the wedding of your dreams. You decided that man wasn't good enough to stand beside you tonight. The silence around us was absolute. Even the breeze seemed to have stopped. Every guest was riveted to the scene playing out before them. Victoria Hampton looked like she wanted to melt into the grass. Marcus was staring at his brother with an expression that suggested he was seeing Derek's character clearly for the first time. "What do you want from me?" Sarah whispered. "I want you to understand what you've thrown away. I want you to recognize that respect isn't optional just because someone loves you unconditionally. And I want you to decide, right now, in front of all these important people, whether your father's dignity matters more than impressing the Hamptons." The tears spilled over, running down her carefully made-up face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Daddy. Are you sorry because you hurt me, or sorry because I'm disrupting your party?" "Both." She sobbed openly now. "I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I took you for granted. I'm sorry I became someone who cares more about appearances than about the man who gave me everything." I let her words hang in the evening air. Around us, 60 guests watched a daughter confront her own character failures in real time. This was the moment. The choice between maintaining my position and offering grace. Between justice and mercy. Between the lesson and the relationship. "Sarah," I said quietly, "I love you more than anything in this world. But I will not be disrespected by anyone, including you. If we're going to move forward, things change. No more taking me for granted. No more treating me like an ATM. No more embarrassment about the work that made your lifestyle possible. Can you commit to that?" "Yes." The word came out choked but definite. "Yes, Daddy. I can. I will." She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, sobbing into my shoulder like she hadn't done since she was a little girl. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." I held her while she cried, aware that everyone was watching, aware that this moment would define how these people viewed both of us. Then I stepped back and addressed the crowd. "Dinner will be served shortly. Please enjoy your evening." I turned to Jennifer Costa, who was watching from the tent entrance with tears in her own eyes. "Miss Costa, you may begin service." The relief on her face was palpable. She disappeared into the kitchen area, calling instructions to her staff. Within minutes, servers emerged with appetizers and champagne. The crowd began to relax, conversations resuming with the nervous energy of people who'd just witnessed something uncomfortably intimate. Derek approached cautiously. "Mr. Mitchell, I owe you an apology. My family shouldn't have suggested you weren't welcome at this dinner. That was wrong." "I appreciate that, Derek. And I hope you'll remember this moment the next time you're tempted to judge someone by their collar color instead of their character." He nodded, properly chastened, and retreated to help his mother, who looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past 10 minutes. Sarah stayed close to my side as we entered the tent together. Her hand gripped mine like she was afraid I might disappear. "Daddy, I really am sorry." "I know, sweetheart. And we'll talk more about this tomorrow. But tonight, let's just try to enjoy your rehearsal dinner together." The evening proceeded with an awkward elegance. People ate Jennifer's excellent food, drank expensive wine, and pretended not to whisper about the scene they'd witnessed. I sat at the head table, exactly where a father should sit at his daughter's rehearsal dinner, and watched Sarah navigate her social circle with noticeably more humility than she'd shown in months. As dessert was being served, Eleanor Ashford appeared at my elbow. She'd arrived quietly, keeping to the shadows, but her satisfied smile told me she'd seen everything. "Mr. Mitchell, that was beautifully handled. Your daughter learned something valuable tonight. Let's hope it sticks, Mrs. Ashford. Tomorrow will tell us whether tonight's lesson was genuine or just performance under pressure." She patted my shoulder. "Either way, this property served its purpose perfectly. I'm glad it went to someone who understands that some lessons are worth any price." Saturday morning arrived with overcast skies that threatened rain but never quite delivered. I woke at 5:30 in my southeast Portland house, the same bedroom where I'd lived for 30 years. The same place where I'd raised Sarah alone, where I'd tucked her in every night, where I'd worried through her teenage years and celebrated her achievements. Everything felt different now, weighted with the possibility that today might repair what had been breaking for years. My phone showed 2 messages from Sarah, both sent after midnight. The first was simple. "Thank you for last night, Daddy. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm grateful for it." The second was longer. "I've been lying awake thinking about everything you said. About the money, the sacrifice, the disrespect. You were right about all of it. I became someone I don't recognize and I'm ashamed of that person. Today I want to marry Derek, but I also want you to know that having you there matters more than anything else." I read both messages twice, searching for sincerity beyond words. Sarah had always been articulate, skilled at saying what people wanted to hear. The question was whether last night's breakdown represented genuine transformation or simply strategic adaptation to an unexpected power shift. Time would provide the answer, but today I would give her the benefit of hope. Tony called at 6:15. "Boss, I've been thinking about yesterday all night. Did you really make her apologize in front of 60 people? I gave her an opportunity to demonstrate whether she valued our relationship more than her pride. She chose correctly. That's not the same thing as forcing an apology." "Yeah, but buying a $3 million mansion to prove a point, that's some serious commitment to the lesson." The lesson needed to be serious, Tony. 25 years of enabling her entitlement required serious intervention. "You coming to the wedding? I thought you weren't invited." "Things changed. I'll be there at 2 o'clock, standing exactly where a father should stand when his daughter gets married." "Good. Because if you need backup dealing with those Hampton people, you know I've got your back." "I appreciate that, but I think we've established the necessary boundaries. Today should be about Sarah and Derek starting their marriage with clarity about family priorities." I spent the morning reviewing the financial documentation one more time. Not because I planned to present it to anyone, but because I needed to remember what this situation had really cost. $760,000 over 25 years. Every category represented choices I'd made to prioritize Sarah's comfort over my own security. Private school instead of retirement contributions. Luxury vehicles instead of investment properties. An extravagant wedding instead of the comfortable retirement I'd once imagined. Those choices had been made with love, but they'd created a monster of entitlement that finally needed confronting. Last night's public reckoning had been step 1. Today would reveal whether the lesson had penetrated beyond surface embarrassment into genuine character development. At noon, I drove to the Ashford estate. The property looked magnificent in the filtered sunlight. White chairs arranged in neat rows facing the river. Floral arrangements framing an arch where Sarah and Derek would exchange vows. Everything orchestrated to create the perfect backdrop for the social event Sarah had prioritized above her relationship with me. Diane from Petal and Stem was making final adjustments to the ceremony flowers. She looked up as I approached, a warm smile crossing her face. "Mr. Mitchell, I heard about last night. The whole vendor community is talking about what happened. Word travels fast. Small industry, and what you did was pretty remarkable. Holding your ground like that took courage. Most parents would have either caved immediately or burned every bridge. You managed to find the narrow path between those extremes. I'm hoping it was the right choice. Ask me again in 6 months whether Sarah actually changed or just learned to hide her contempt better." Diane secured a white rose into an arrangement before responding. "My father was a carpenter. Built furniture by hand his whole life. When I told my college friends what he did, I used words like artisan and craftsman because I was embarrassed to say carpenter. Took me years to recognize that shame said more about me than about him." "When did you figure it out?" "When he died and I realized all those years of embarrassment had stolen time I could have spent appreciating him." She met my eyes directly. "Your daughter got a chance to learn that lesson while you're still here to receive the appreciation. That's a gift, even if it came wrapped in confrontation." The photography crew arrived at 12:30, the same team Sarah had hired months ago. The lead photographer, a young man named Aaron, approached cautiously. "Mr. Mitchell, I understand there were some complications yesterday. Just want to confirm we're still shooting today." "We're shooting today. My daughter and I have reached an understanding. Everything proceeds as originally planned." Relief washed across his face. "That's good to hear. I've photographed a lot of weddings where family drama derailed everything. Usually ends with someone crying in the parking lot and thousands of dollars wasted. Let's hope today ends differently." Marcus Hampton found me near the ceremony site at 1 o'clock. Derek's younger brother had been one of the few people at the engagement party who'd treated me like an actual human being rather than hired help. "Mr. Mitchell, can we talk privately for a moment?" We walked toward the gardens, away from the growing activity around the ceremony area. Marcus kept his hands in his pockets, his expression troubled. "I wanted to apologize for my family's behavior. What my mother said about you not fitting in, what Derek implied about your background, all of it was wrong. You didn't need to apologize, Marcus. You weren't part of the problem. Maybe not directly, but I didn't speak up either. I sat there at family dinners listening to them discuss Sarah's father like you were some kind of embarrassing complication to be managed. I should have said something. Why didn't you?" He was quiet for a moment, watching a hawk circle over the river below. "Because challenging my family's worldview has consequences. They value conformity, tradition, maintaining the social order they've always known. Disagreeing with that gets you labeled as difficult or ungrateful. But last night made me realize the cost of that silence. I studied Derek's brother with new appreciation. Most people in his position would have maintained family solidarity regardless of the ethics involved. You're braver than you give yourself credit for, Marcus. Speaking up now when you could have stayed silent shows character." He shrugged uncomfortably. "I just want you to know that not all of us bought into the superiority complex. Some of us recognize that building something from nothing, like you did with your business, takes more real strength than inheriting a trust fund and coasting on family connections. How's Derek handling everything?" Marcus's expression shifted to something between amusement and concern. "He's rattled. Spent most of last night and this morning questioning whether he really knows Sarah at all. Watching her break down in front of everyone, seeing the depth of what she'd taken for granted, it shook his perception of who he was marrying. That might be the healthiest thing for both of them. Going into marriage with illusions is dangerous. Better to see clearly now than discover the truth 10 years and 2 kids later. My mother is still furious, though. She sees last night as a humiliation she'll never quite recover from in her social circle. Good. Maybe experiencing humiliation will give her some empathy for people she's spent her life looking down on." Guests began arriving at 1:30. I watched from inside the mansion as luxury vehicles filled the parking area. Women in designer dresses, men in expensive suits, all of them probably aware of yesterday's drama and curious about today's outcome. The wedding had transformed from a private family celebration into a social spectacle where everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Linda Chen arrived at 1:45, dressed elegantly in a navy pantsuit. She found me in Eleanor's old office where I'd been watching the arrival parade. "Bob, I had to come see how this plays out. After everything we did to make the property purchase happen, I'm invested in the outcome. I appreciate you being here, Linda. And thank you again for expediting everything so quickly." She waved off the gratitude. "That's what attorneys do. Though I'll admit, most property purchases don't come with this level of family drama attached. This will make an excellent story in 10 years. At 1:55, Sarah arrived. I watched through the window as she emerged from a white limousine, her wedding dress catching the filtered sunlight. The dress I'd paid $9,000 for looked objectively stunning, but what caught my attention was her expression. Nervous, uncertain, searching the crowd like she was looking for someone specific. Looking for me. Rita appeared at my elbow. She'd driven up from the city, insisting she wouldn't miss this for anything. "Boss, you should go down there. Your daughter needs to see you before she walks down that aisle. I'm not sure she's earned that reassurance yet." Rita, who'd worked for me 20 years and watched Sarah grow up through countless office visits, gave me a look that could have melted steel. Robert Mitchell, you made your point. You bought a mansion, disrupted her rehearsal dinner, and forced her to confront her own character failures in front of everyone who matters to her. Now you get to decide what kind of father you want to be. The kind who stays angry, or the kind who offers grace. When did you get so wise? Around the same time you started being stubborn. Now go see your daughter before she walks down that aisle thinking you're still punishing her. I found Sarah in the bridal suite, a converted bedroom on the mansion's second floor. She stood before a full-length mirror, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted her veil. Two bridesmaids hovered nearby, looking uncertain about whether to stay or give us privacy. Sarah saw me in the mirror's reflection and turned immediately. Daddy. Her voice broke on the word. You came. Of course I came. I told you I would be here. I know, but after everything, I wasn't sure if you meant it. I was afraid you'd changed your mind, that you'd decide I didn't deserve to have you here. I crossed the room and took her hands in mine. They were ice cold despite the warm afternoon. Sarah, I need you to understand something. Last night wasn't about punishing you. It was about making you see what you'd become before it was too late to change. Did it work? Are you different today than you were 3 days ago? Tears welled in her eyes but didn't fall. She'd learned that much about makeup preservation at least. I spent all night thinking about the person I've been. Not just this week, but for years. The way I talked about you to Derek's family. The way I introduced you like I was apologizing for your existence. The way I treated your money like it was just something that appeared magically without any sacrifice on your part. She gripped my hands tighter. I'm ashamed, Daddy. Genuinely ashamed. Shame is a starting point, but it's not enough. What matters is whether you'll be different going forward. Can you be proud of having a father who works with his hands? Can you value character over social status? Can you treat me with the respect I've earned through 25 years of sacrifice? Yes. The word came out firm and definite. I can and I will. I want to be someone you're proud of again, not just someone who takes advantage of your love. She paused, then continued quietly. And I want you to walk me down the aisle. Not because it's traditional, but because you're the person who made me who I am. Both the good parts and the parts one need to fix. The bridesmaids had quietly left, giving us complete privacy. I pulled Sarah into a hug, careful not to crush her dress. When I raised you alone after your mother died, I promised myself I'd be everything you needed. Somewhere along the way, I confused giving you everything with teaching you to value what you received. That's partly my failure too. She pulled back to look at me directly. Stop taking responsibility for my choices. I'm 28 years old. Old enough to know better. Old enough to recognize disrespect when I'm displaying it. You gave me every advantage, and I used those advantages to build a sense of superiority I had no right to feel. That's on me, not on you. A knock at the door interrupted us. The wedding coordinator peeked inside. Miss Mitchell, we're ready to begin whenever you are. Sarah looked at me with a question in her eyes. Are we ready? I offered her my arm. Let's go get you married, sweetheart. The walk down the grand staircase felt significant in ways that went beyond simple wedding tradition. Sarah's hand rested on my arm, her grip firm and sure. At the bottom of the stairs, the bridesmaids waited to form the processional. Derek's groomsmen stood ready in the entry hall. Everything was orchestrated and perfect, exactly as Sarah had planned months ago. We walked out into the April afternoon, where 150 guests rose to their feet. I could see Derek at the altar, his expression nervous but genuine. Father Thomas waited beside him, his priest's robes moving slightly in the breeze from the river. The string quartet began playing, something classical I didn't recognize but that sounded appropriately solemn. Every step down that aisle, I was aware of eyes tracking us. Victoria Hampton sat in the front row, her expression carefully neutral but her eyes sharp with assessment. Tony and Rita sat together near the back, both of them grinning widely. Eleanor Ashford occupied a seat near the middle, looking satisfied with how her property was being used. Linda Chen gave me a small nod as we passed, acknowledging that we'd come full circle from Thursday's emergency closing. When we reached the altar, Father Thomas asked the traditional question. "Who gives this woman to be married?" I looked at Sarah one more time, seeing both the little girl who'd lost her mother too young and the woman who'd finally learned some hard truths about respect and family. "Her father," I said clearly. "With love and hope for her future." I placed her hand in Derek's and stepped back to take my seat in the front row. The ceremony proceeded with traditional vows and readings. Derek and Sarah exchanged rings, their voices steady as they promised love and fidelity. Father Thomas pronounced them married, and they kissed while guests applauded. The reception moved into the ballroom, where Jennifer Costa's team had transformed the space into an elegant celebration. Tables set with china and crystal, centerpieces featuring the white roses Diane had arranged, everything polished and proper. Exactly the kind of event Sarah had dreamed of hosting. During dinner, Derek stood to give his speech. He thanked various people for their contributions, acknowledged his family's support, then paused and looked directly at me. "But most of all, I want to thank Robert Mitchell. Not just for his financial generosity in making this weekend possible, though that generosity has been extraordinary. I want to thank him for teaching all of us a lesson about respect, about the value of honest work, and about having the courage to set boundaries even when it's difficult." He raised his glass. "To Bob Mitchell, a man who built something from nothing and raised an incredible woman in the process. Even when that woman occasionally needed reminding about what really matters." The room erupted in applause. Victoria Hampton looked like she'd swallowed something bitter, but even she was clapping politely. Marcus raised his glass with genuine enthusiasm. When it came time for my toast, I kept it simple. "Sarah, when you were 6 years old and your mother had just died, you asked me if I would always love you no matter what. I told you then what I'll tell you now. Love isn't diminished by disappointment or tested by mistakes. Real love survives conflict and emerges stronger. You tested that theory this week, and we both learned something valuable." I raised my glass. "To Sarah and Derek. May your marriage be built on respect, honesty, and the understanding that love requires both grace and accountability." The evening continued with dancing and celebration. Sarah made a point of introducing me to every important guest, describing my business not apologetically but with genuine pride. "This is my father, Robert Mitchell. He built Portland's most successful independent plumbing company from nothing." The shift in her presentation was subtle but unmistakable. As the reception wound down near midnight, Sarah found me standing near the windows overlooking the river. The ballroom behind us was still full of guests, but the formal portions had concluded. "Daddy, I know I already said this, but thank you. Not just for today, but for having the strength to show me what I'd become. Most fathers would have either given up or continued enabling the behavior. You did neither. I hope you remember this feeling 6 months from now when the Hamptons inevitably try to pull you back into their worldview. The real test isn't whether you can apologize under pressure. It's whether you can maintain respect and gratitude when there's no immediate consequence for forgetting them." She nodded seriously. "I know. And I'll probably stumble sometimes. But I want you to call me on it when I do. Don't let me slide back into entitlement just because it's easier than having difficult conversations. Deal? And Sarah, one more thing." "What's that?" "The $3 million I spent buying this property, that's coming out of any inheritance you might have expected. I plan to live a long time and enjoy my retirement, but when I'm gone, this little lesson will cost you substantially." She laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd heard from her in months. "Fair enough, Daddy. Completely fair." We stood together watching the river flow past, father and daughter, the relationship damaged but not destroyed. Tested but ultimately strengthened. The weekend had cost me a mansion and considerable emotional energy, but it had purchased something more valuable than either. It had bought back my daughter's respect. Tomorrow, Sarah and Derek would leave for their honeymoon in Hawaii. The Hamptons would return to their estate and their social circles. Life would resume its normal patterns. But something fundamental had shifted. A boundary had been established. A lesson had been learned. And a relationship that had been dying of slow neglect had been shocked back to life through dramatic intervention. Whether the change would last remained to be seen. But for tonight, standing in a mansion I'd bought to prove a point, watching my daughter celebrate her marriage with genuine appreciation visible in every interaction, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. 3 months passed before I fully believed the change in Sarah was genuine. Not 3 days or 3 weeks, but 90 full days of consistent behavior that demonstrated she'd actually absorbed the lesson rather than simply performing contrition under duress. The first sign came 2 weeks after the wedding when she called on a Tuesday evening. Not to ask for money or to report some crisis requiring my intervention, but simply to talk. "Daddy, I was driving past the old house today and remembered how you used to make pancakes every Saturday morning. Do you still do that?" Her voice carried nostalgia rather than transaction. "I still make pancakes on Saturdays, though it's usually just for me now. You should come by this weekend. Bring Derek if he's free." "I'd love that. And Daddy, can I bring the ingredients? I know you always paid for everything, but I'd like to start contributing when I can." That small gesture, offering to bring pancakes ingredients that probably cost $15, represented a shift in thinking that couldn't be faked. She came that Saturday with Derek in tow, and we spent 3 hours making breakfast together like we used to when she was young. Derek wore jeans and a regular shirt, no designer labels visible, and asked intelligent questions about the plumbing business without any condescension. The second sign came when Sarah started calling Victoria Hampton out on her elitism. Marcus told me about it over coffee one morning at Tony's Diner. My mother made some comment about service workers at the country club, something dismissive about their intelligence. Sarah actually stood up and said that her father had worked service jobs early in his career and that those workers deserved respect, not contempt. My mother nearly choked on her wine. How did Victoria respond? She backed down. First time I've ever seen anyone successfully challenge her worldview without getting frozen out of family functions. Sarah's got more backbone than any of us realized. She just needed a reason to use it. The third sign came when I drove past the Ashford estate one afternoon and saw a for sale sign at the entrance. I called Eleanor immediately. "Mrs. Ashford, I see you're selling the property again." "Not me, Mr. Mitchell." "You are." "I had the sign installed this morning per your instructions from last week." "My instructions? I never authorized any sale." Eleanor's laugh carried through the phone. "Check your voicemail from yesterday. Your daughter called my attorney and convinced him that you'd want to sell now that the property had served its purpose. She said something about you not needing a $3 million reminder anymore because the lesson had been thoroughly learned." I found Sarah's voicemail buried among work messages. "Daddy, I talked to Mrs. Ashford's attorney about listing the estate. I know you bought it to teach me a lesson, and I want you to know the lesson is learned. You don't need to keep that property as insurance against my bad behavior. Sell it, use the money for your retirement, and trust that I'm actually different now. I love you." The estate sold 6 weeks later to a young couple who planned to continue operating it as a wedding venue. The sale price was $3.4 million, giving me a $200,000 profit on my 3-month investment. I deposited the entire amount into retirement accounts I'd neglected for years while funding Sarah's lifestyle. Linda Chen handled the closing with her usual efficiency. "Bob, this might be the strangest property transaction I've ever been part of. Bought to prove a point, sold because the point was proven. Only you could turn family drama into a profitable real estate investment. It was never about the profit. But I won't pretend the $200,000 gain doesn't ease the sting of the original $3 million lesson." The fourth and most convincing sign came when Sarah asked me to have lunch with her and Derek at a restaurant in Southeast Portland. Not a trendy Pearl District spot or a West Hills establishment, but a blue-collar diner 3 blocks from my office where construction workers and plumbers ate daily. She'd chosen the location deliberately. Over burgers and coffee, Sarah outlined a proposal. Derek and I have been talking about our finances. We've been living off his trust fund and my sporadic consulting income, which basically means we're living off his family's money. That needs to change. We want to build something ourselves. What did you have in mind? Derek shifted uncomfortably but met my eyes directly. I want to work for Mitchell & Sons Plumbing. Not in management, not in some invented position created for the owner's son-in-law. I want to start as an apprentice and actually learn the trade from the ground up. The request caught me completely off guard. Derek, you have a business degree from Stanford. You could work anywhere in your family's real estate empire. That's exactly the problem, he said quietly. I've never earned anything. Never built anything. Never proven I could succeed based on my own merit rather than my family name. Working for my father means everyone always wondering if I'm competent or just connected. Working for you means earning respect the hard way. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. I know this seems sudden, but we've been discussing it for weeks. Derek needs what I needed, a lesson about the value of honest work. And I need to stop being ashamed of where I come from. Having my husband work for my father's plumbing company isn't a step down. It's a step toward authenticity. I studied them both carefully, searching for manipulation or performance. All I saw was genuine determination mixed with appropriate nervousness about my response. Derek, if you come work for me, you'll start at the bottom. Early mornings, dirty work, learning from men who've been doing this for decades. Some of them might resent the boss's son-in-law. Some might try to make it harder on you. Can you handle that? I can handle it. And if I can't, then I'll learn I'm not cut out for it and figure out something else. But I'd rather fail at something real than succeed at something handed to me. He started the following Monday. Tony called me at the end of Derek's first day. Boss, the Hampton kid crawled under the Peterson house today to replace old pipes. Came out covered in mud and spiders. Didn't complain once. Some of the guys are impressed despite themselves. Give him 6 months. If he's still showing up and working hard, we'll know it's real. 6 months later, Derek was still there. Promoted to journeyman status, earning the respect of the crew through consistent effort rather than family connections. Victoria Hampton had apparently stopped speaking to him entirely, unable to comprehend why her son would choose manual labor over country club management positions. Marcus reported that family dinners had become tense affairs where Derek's career choice was referred to as his phase, as if honest work was something to be outgrown. Sarah got a real job too, working for a nonprofit that provided job training to low-income adults. The pay was a fraction of what she could have earned in corporate consulting, but she came home energized by work that actually mattered. She started talking about her clients with the same enthusiasm she'd once reserved for describing expensive restaurants and social events. One Saturday morning 9 months after the wedding, Sarah and Derek joined me for pancakes again. We sat around my kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped Sarah with homework 20 years earlier, and she pulled out an envelope. "Daddy, this is for you." I opened it to find a check for $5,000. "Sarah, what is this?" "It's a payment. Toward the $760,000 you spent raising me. I know $5,000 barely makes a dent, but Derek and I discussed it and we want to start paying you back. A little each month as we can afford it." "Sarah, I never asked for repayment. You gave me a detailed accounting of every dollar spent. That was your way of showing me the cost of my entitlement. Now I want to show you that I understand the weight of that investment. You don't have to accept the payments, but I need to make them. For my own sense of integrity." I looked at Derek, who nodded. "We've created a budget that allows us to send you money monthly. It'll take years to repay everything, maybe decades. But we want you to know that your sacrifice is recognized and valued, even if we can never fully repay the emotional investment alongside the financial one." The check sat on my kitchen table while I processed what they were offering. Not just money, but acknowledgement. Not just repayment, but a fundamental shift in how they viewed our relationship. Keep your money. Invest it in your future. Build something that makes you proud. That's a better return on my investment than any repayment plan. "Daddy," Sarah said firmly, "I need to do this. Please let me do this." We compromised. They would make monthly payments into a college fund for any future grandchildren I might eventually have. The money wouldn't come to me, but it would represent their commitment to breaking the cycle of entitlement that had nearly destroyed our relationship. Today, a year after the wedding, my relationship with Sarah is better than it's been in a decade. She calls regularly, visits often, and treats me with the respect I should have demanded years ago. Derek has become a skilled plumber and a decent man, earning his place in the family through character rather than connection. The Hamptons still don't speak to either of them, but Marcus comes around occasionally, quietly distancing himself from his family's value system. The mansion I bought to teach a lesson is now hosting weddings for other families. The $200,000 profit sits in retirement accounts, securing the future I'd neglected while spoiling my daughter. And the most expensive lesson in parental boundaries I ever taught has paid dividends that can't be measured in money. Sometimes love requires confrontation. Sometimes teaching requires dramatic gestures. And sometimes the best thing a parent can do is refuse to enable the very behavior their unconditional love made possible. I bought a mansion to show my daughter what she'd thrown away. She earned it back through consistent change that proved the lesson had been learned. That's not revenge. That's not even justice. That's just a father loving his daughter enough to risk their relationship in order to save it. And in the end, that risk paid off in ways no amount of money could purchase. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.